All right. So in the chat, let us know where you're calling from. So many familiar names here. Hello, Anne Marie. I saw Ken from Cleveland on there. Charles, hello. Denise. Jason from Denver. All right. This is a who's who, Deacon. Everybody's showing up.
I'm ready. This is pretty great. And so many of you we're going to see at ICSC in about 4 days. It's going to be wonderful, wonderful.
Assuming New Orleans is still standing, right? Don't we have a hurricane heading?
Yeah, yeah. I'm F5ing Google News all the time. I just have hurricane in the search bar. Just
Uh, our buddy Corey Howitt assured me yesterday that it's just a little guy. It's a category one. Won't get any more. It'll pass right through.
just a
Nothing to
wee
worry about.
hurricane. Just like a wee tornado. It's like
That's right.
just a
That's
little
right.
guy. It's fine.
Um, all right. So everybody's here. Hello, everyone. We'll do some housekeeping, then I'll ask Deacon John to lead us in prayer, and then I'll just get right to the heart of it. Housekeeping, yes, we are recording this. So we will send you the recording probably by the end of the day, if not by tomorrow morning. If you don't see it, check your spam folder. But it'll have a recording of the presentation as well as a link to download the slides. And if you're one of the dioceses who participated in the survey, you'll also have the ability to download the full report, right, with all of the Q&A and all the responses. So look for that later today. If you have questions as we go, hit the Q&A button. Everybody uses the chat, and that's well and good, and we'll keep an eye on it. But if you hit the Q&A button, it actually pops up on our screen. So if we don't answer you, you know that we are purposefully ignoring you. So which is kind of a satisfying thing if you want to know. So hit the Q&A button. Don't put questions in the chat. Deacon, am I missing anything?
No, I think we're ready to rock and roll here. So
Okay, so Deacon John is up in Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis. He leads our Catholic social media team, which we can talk about if people are interested. But today, John, do you mind leading us in prayer? Then I'll.
yeah, we'd be happy to. We'll give him a moment. All right, let's remember we're in the holy presence of God today. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord Jesus, we thank you for the gift of this day, for the gift of this autumn season, which is about to bring so much beauty to so many areas of North America. We would ask that you would please bless this conversation today, that you would bless all of our attendees on this call, that you might pour out your abundant graces upon them as they seek to do your will in their own dioceses, and that many people might be drawn to your gospel and to your holy name this day through their work. And we ask for the intercession of all of our guardian angels and all of our patron saints, as we say, grant, O merciful God, that we may ardently desire, prudently examine, truthfully acknowledge, and perfectly accomplish what is pleasing to you for the praise and the glory of your name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much, Deacon. Okay, so let's jump in. I saw in the chat there. I think Lori was here from Lafayette. So we were talking as people came in. We have a big conference. So International Catholic Stewardship Conference is coming up. It's down in Louisiana. I think we're flying down Saturday. So if you have any inside information on whether the hurricane is a real hurricane or just a little bitty one, go ahead and let us know. Put our fears to rest. Okay. So, Deacon, today, just diocese on the line. The point of today is to walk through the big diocesan survey results. I'm going through all the top level stuff, the interesting things, and then if people want, if their diocese participate, they can download the full report. So, just an interactive chance to share what we learned and all the great stuff. As background for people who do not know who we are, and I think again, as I looked on this list, I think I probably personally talked to every single person here. Just to recap, PSG, what we do this. We work at Catholic dioceses. More than 120 of 180 we work with in some way. For a lot of them, we run their annual appeals. For others, we manage their Razor's Edge database. We do a lot of Razor's Edge work. Deacon John works with thousands of parishes and I think 30 or 40 dioceses. We help them with social media and some of the stuff we do over there. But this is all we do. PSG is a consulting firm to dioceses, and we get involved in tech and software and fundraising and communications, all sorts of stuff, which puts us in a good position to do projects like these, which we really love. Do big free research projects to get data from dioceses and then present it in a nice packageable way so that all the dioceses benefit. That's what we're doing today. We will jump right in. Topic at hand, 2024 Diocesan Survey. The last one we did was 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Usually when we do a big survey like this, it's actually around the fundraising. Again, our core focus is on annual appeals and diocesan fundraising. But this one's a little bit different, right? This one we partnered with DISC, which is the Diocesan IT group. I think it's the Diocesan Information Security Conference. So we partnered with them to do a really focused survey on what software are dioceses using, what challenges do they have, how are they set up from an IT standpoint, as well as let's talk about communications. Who's still printing a newspaper? Who's moved to magazines? Everything else. Um, to refresh your memory or bring back some PTSD, this is what the survey looked like. So this is what we're talking about. If you got this through email or through the mail, you got it from me, your diocese participated. It was kind of a pain in the rear because it takes a long time to fill out, to gather some of this data and fill it out, but we really appreciate everybody who did. So I'm going to start there and just say thank you. So I know that you all have a million things on your plate. I know that the last thing you want to do when you wake up in the morning is spend a couple hours filling out a survey, but it is for the greater good and every diocese benefits. So we got 119, Deacon, which I believe is the record. Is that right?
Yes, it's quite impressive, I have to say. So
119 dioceses participated, ran down the information, provided it back to us, let us crunch the numbers. So thank you to everybody. If your name is on this list, I owe you a beer at the bar at the next conference, whether it's DFMC or DISC or ICSC. I very much appreciate you. Uh, I also want to highlight something that's kind of impressive. These 51 dioceses, Deacon, managed to ghost me for about 3 months. So if your name is on this list, you did nearly the impossible, which is you ignored probably 10 to 15 emails from me, a couple of phone calls. So these are the folks that many of them said they'd participate, but then just something happened. But you had to work, right? You had to work in order to not fill this out because I do not give up easily. This is a thankless task doing this big research project. So on this list, we know that you intended to do it. Maybe we can get you to join in next year or 2 years whenever we do the big one. But I did want to complicate you because that is not an easy thing to just watch me flailing about by email and
looking at
phone.
you, Duluth. I'm driving up there next year. Just get ready.
all
Coming,
eyes are
coming
on
right for you.
all eyes are on Duluth right now. The wall of shame. There were three dioceses that actually declined to participate, which is different. So there's like ghosting or like pocket veto, and then there's three dioceses. And I won't say one of them. They said the bishop wouldn't allow it, which I respect. One of them just wasn't interested and said, "Hey, don't talk to anybody else at my diocese. I don't have time for this." One of them, Deacon, the CFO said the survey was so poorly designed that it would have compromised their integrity to fill it out. So I just throw that out there. I would never ask anybody to compromise their integrity. Everybody everybody has their own opinions on it. Thank you to the 120 dioceses who did fill out the survey. 3 declines, 50 sort of ignore and ghost us, but 119, 120 took the time for it, and I thank you so much. You guys are fantastic. Here are the fruits of that labor, and all of the many hands make light work type thing. All right, so let's start with structure and setup as a preview. We're going to talk IT stuff first, then we're going to talk about software, then we're going to talk about mandates and whether dioceses mandate certain types of software. Everybody's always interested in that. Then we're going to talk about clergy communications, then we're going to talk about newspaper. So we'll go through quickly. Again, we'll send you these slides so you don't have to take notes. You can just download all the slides. Diocesan structure and setup. We started with IT. How is your office set up? 50% of dioceses have an internal IT department. 33, which actually surprised me a little bit, about a third diocese just outsource this entirely. So if you have a computer issue or an information security issue, you're going to an outside firm. And about 70% have a hybrid where they do some stuff in-house and the rest they use a firm for. So interesting data there. We got asked about Microsoft setup by a whole bunch of people. How do we do this at dioceses? There are only 13% of dioceses where they have all of the parishes and the diocese on the same, I'll call it a Microsoft tenant, right? So where everybody is part of the same organization, they share folders, they have a SharePoint structure set up. 74%, every parish is an island. Deacon, does that surprise you at all?
This shocked me actually, because I have heard a lot of people saying that they're trying to make this happen. This would show that a lot of those attempts are in their early stages, or maybe have not been as successful as people may have wished. Obviously, on the Catholic social media side, we talk about file sharing all the time, so this one did kind of blow my mind.
And I would say, so the nice part about the survey, again, if you're one of those dioceses that participated, you can download the report and you can go see who are the dioceses that have everybody on one tenant, and then you can call them up and say, how is it working? What are the lessons that you learned? That's the whole reason that we do this, is to foster that, to make everybody's job easier. There's 180 dioceses all solving the same problems. Let's go talk to that 13% and find out if it's working or not.
Yep.
Okay, marketplace of vendors. So what are the software vendors and the service providers that dioceses are using? I'm going to do sort of a lightning round here. We're going to start diocesan video conferencing. It's a Teams world, right? So more than half are using Teams. And again, some dioceses can use both, right? So this is not an exclusive. We learned that early on in the survey. Some say we use Teams and Google Meet, but basically it's Teams and Zoom. Everything else is kind of fading away in the background. In terms of chat, Teams is the winner, and then none, a fair amount. That surprised me. I think I have a slide later on when I kind of give our uh, take on this. Deacon,
Yep.
do you remember what life was like before we had chat, as a
I
company?
I don't, and I was expecting to see more on Slack. I know that their prices have gone up recently, so I get that's a problem. It does not shock me that most people are not on Discord. That its origins are a little, a little gamer.
Yes.
So I get it. But yeah, this was a little bit blew me away in some ways as well. So
When we created the survey, I asked a lot of the disc people, the diocesan IT people, to help me, add questions and suggest answers. And it was such a great worldview. Like they were throwing out, oh, and then they might use Discord, they might use XYZ, and I'm like, nobody's using this stuff. But like the people helping write the questions were very much, in that world.
yes, yep.
Um, so chat, Teams, and then lots of people don't use chat, which is honestly an issue from an operation standpoint. Your lives can get a lot easier. Accounting, Sage is the winner, but a nice kind of distribution here. Sage, followed by a mix of sort of local regional groups. Financial Edge, which is a Blackbaud product, that's the corresponding product to Razor's Edge. QuickBooks, Great Plains, on and on down from there. Payroll, Diocesan Payroll, a whole lot of mom and pop shops, right? Like or
Mm,
local software vendor specific stuff, followed by Paylocity, Paycor, ADP. If I remember correctly, I think a couple of years ago, a bunch of dioceses got burned. There was like a payroll provider company that went under. I think this was 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know which one that was. It's probably not one that's on this list, but I just remember there's a traumatic experience for a whole bunch of dioceses. So there's a lot of moving about um, in the results here. So this would have been much different than if I'd asked it 2 or 3 years ago.
yep.
Uh, Somebody asked in the chat, where to download the full report. We're going to send a link after this. So right after this webinar, you'll get a link. If your diocese participated, you can go submit your information, and based on your email, if your email belongs to a diocese participated, you can download the full report. If you have any issues, just shoot me a link. Okay, HR software. Lots don't use it. About a third don't have anything. 27% was an other. Other is a big category to cover when it's just a whole bunch of one-offs, right? Not enough to put on this slide. Paylocity, Paycor, ADP after that. Diocesan donor database. This is the world we spend a lot of time in. No surprise there. Razor's Edge is used by 53% of the respondents, followed by ParishSoft, followed by Ministry Platform, which are both parish-focused software, and then a lot of everything else, right? A little bit of PDS, a little bit of Virtuous, on and on from there. Diocesan website, local firm. So you have somebody who knows somebody who builds websites or somebody inside, so use them. eCatholic is the main one when people are looking to software vendors, followed by diocesan or even built internally. Not happening a lot, but a little bit less than 1 in 10 actually have people internally that build a website. On from
Nick,
there.
would you lay some money on that e-Catholic number being larger next time we do this in 2 years?
Yes, absolutely. Typically, you're just throwing this out, so now I'm going to go on a half-hour tangent about this topic of. No, typically, a diocese will hire a comms person, and within a year or two, it's like we got to do a giant overhaul of the website, right? And a whole bunch of energy goes into it. And then 2 or 3 years later, a new comms person comes in, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and it's like, oh, this is
Mhm.
garbage. We need a brand new one. I'm going to bring in my own firm. When dioceses get tired of that after a certain point, they go to eCatholic, and eCatholic provides a great vanilla, like solid, good-looking website,
Right.
consistent. Again, we have no dog in the fight. We operate in these circles, right? We help so many dioceses. We see a lot of stuff. That's where the market's at. Diocesan bulk email, Flocknote is the clear winner. More than a third of dioceses are using Flocknote. MailChimp and Constant Contact battling it out from there. Social media management, lots aren't using any social media, which is no surprise. John, Catholic social media, that's what John does for a living,
There.
is helping dioceses share social media content. Uh,
CSNV Hootsuite. I love it.
by
That doesn't
nose.
keep me up at night.
Hootsuite, Buffer, Sprout, some other stuff is being used. This is an early market, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Diocesan mobile app. Boy, you want to get me going? Ask me a question about this. I am relieved to see the none at 73%. We get asked about this quite a bit. We have studied it. I think in our previous big research project, we looked at this to find out if it raised any more money. Deacon, I've yet to see anything I've yet to see a successful implementation or use of an app at the diocesan or even the parish level. I'll say
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, I've got exactly in the last 6 years of talking to parishes about this, I have exactly one church I could name that has done it well, but the amount of effort that had to go into that was extraordinary.
Yes.
Again, I think as we found, remember, we all had that moment, 10 years ago maybe, where apps just proliferated. And then we realized, oh, everybody's going back to the same 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. So really, it's like, have a mobile presence that is sort of app agnostic. People are going to see it through the browser on the phone
Yes.
versus some
And
app itself that people are going to click on every single day. It just doesn't happen. So
when it doesn't happen, when you're at a diocese or parish and a member of your finance council or somebody comes and says, we need an app, your question needs to be, what is it that this app can do that we can't do with a mobile friendly website? And if there's nothing, then you have everything, right?
yeah.
Because the promise of an app, I get it, it's enticing. Oh man, people are going to log in and they're going to download sermons and we're going to have interactive stuff and we'll like do some geolocation small group. It sounds great. It is never going to happen. Like, and you do not have the bandwidth in most
Mhm.
parishes to do functionally everything you want to do right now, much less add another piece of technology that then requires, 3 or 4 more full-time people. So we are very down on apps. I apologize to all the app creators that are out there. We will tell every diocese to save your money. You've never been a successful, in my experience, a successful app launch that's doing anything that you can't just do through a mobile-friendly website or much more cost-effective means. Okay. Now that we've broken some hearts and gored some sacred cows, Deacon, there's people online that have like staked their career on getting this app up and running. We just told them this is a terrible idea. Email security. So this is some deep IT stuff. No
Mhm.
before. I hadn't even heard of it. Had you heard of them, Deacon? That no before.
I have not heard of them. No,
Apparently
this
they're huge,
was a little
huge in
bit.
the diocesan market. They're like David Hasselhoff in Germany, like real popular there. No before. Wiser, none. Microsoft in there. Spam filtering, something we care about. Boy, until we started this 5 or 6 years ago, I didn't know anything about spam filtering. Now I feel like that's everything I deal with is just how do I
Yep.
cut down on the amount of junk that's getting in. Microsoft, Barracuda, Sophos, Proofpoint, firewall protection, Fortinet, Sophos, SonicWall. Again, all these slides are yours. Regardless of whether you fill out the survey, you get these high-level slides. So if I'm moving quick, it's just because you don't need me to read to you. You can go and grab the stuff you're interested in. Deacon, did you know anything about tribunal software before we did this?
I knew that it existed. I honestly did not know that there were multiple providers out there. I assumed there was sort of just one niche. There's always that. I don't know if you know that meme of like, there's the whole sort of deck of cards, and then it's all held up by one toothpick, and it says, that guy running it out of his basement in Lincoln, Nebraska. Like that's kind of what this feels like to me. But
Yes.
what do I know? So
It's an issue. I love it. Like I look at this case master, like this is one of those things. Like somebody came up with it, they've got half of the market, and they have a great little niche business, I imagine. So case master followed by canonical tribunal systems, and then Excel spreadsheets and everything after that. I saw a question in the chat from our friend Gabby. Yes, we do have more information on parishes and websites and mandates. That's actually coming up right here in the next section. Okay, uh, let's talk about something I'm passionate about. Database, single source of truth. This is when I talk about single source of truth. If you're a comms person on here or a development person on here, not an IT person, what I'm talking about is um, you have. Well, I'll just explain it. I probably got slides on this, right? We're talking about when Nick and Holly in Omaha join Christ the King Parish, does that data make it up to the diocese, right? Is there somewhere that I can go to this source of information and know where this family is a parishioner at, what their email is, everything else? Or do you have multiple different silos of data and none of them can be officially trusted every single time? We asked dioceses, do you maintain a single source of truth? Less than a third said yes. Deacon, surprise, not surprise?
no, I mean, this is so much of the work that the folks on the database side of the PSG shop do all the time, where there's a lot of syncing and resyncing and trying to figure out where that point of truth is. This is a very difficult problem to be able to overcome.
Yep, yep. It's tough. It really is. So even of that third that say yes, we maintain a single source of truth. Here's how it happens, or sorry, here's where it's owned. So the development office, more often than not, is the one that owns it, and we are in favor. That is the way to do it. And when you ask why should the development office be responsible for maintaining that and not the IT, or the comms office? Because nobody will care about it more than the development office, and that is where it should lie, right? If you have your IT team be in charge of maintaining it, they'll do a good job, but they're not losing sleep at night. If somebody's
Right.
information is not accurate, they're not. The development office, they're judged by it. That is their profession, right? They're held accountable to raising a certain amount of money. You can only do that if you have clean data. So put it where the people are going to care the most about it, which is the development office, which is almost always the case.
Right.
In terms of how they maintain that source of truth, I thought this was interesting. So this is of the third of dioceses that do maintain a single source of truth. 40%, give or take, 38%, do so because everything's already just in one platform. So this is probably like, I'm thinking the Diocese of Austin, which has a ministry platform now, I believe, at the diocese and the parishes. So it's that, or some of the dioceses, the smaller dioceses that are on ParishSoft. So dioceses that don't have Razor's Edge over here and then ParishSoft over here, they've got everything in one big data lake, so it makes it easy, right? It just lives and exists in there already. For 20%, excuse me, the diocese doesn't have everything in one system. They've got a diocesan system, usually Razor's Edge, and then they've got parish systems. The diocese is sending out parish rosters maybe every 6 months, maybe once a year, and asking the parish, here's what we have, update, mark people that are deceased, give me your new people, and send it back to me, and then I'll bring it into our system, right? So 1 in 5, and that's messy. It's not clean, it's messy. 43% of the 31%. So about half of the dioceses who say they have a source of truth say that the way they maintain it is that they ask parishes to send updates as they happen. Deacon John, do you think that realistically happens?
This is a challenge.
Ah,
So
oh,
no,
so
we
diplomatic.
know just like getting people to fill out surveys, right? You're always going to have that 20% that just straight up does not respond or respond, doesn't pay a ton of attention to what it is that's asked. I think a lot of this challenge that comes is simply because there's so many different edits that could happen, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we've got births, we've got deaths, we've got sacraments, we've got changes in phone number, email address, mailing. There's just so many things that could occur. It's like there's just a lot of slippage there.
yep.
Also, because at the parish level, we know often there's not a single individual that's keeping track of records. There's a group of people that are doing it in and out. Often that's dealt with by volunteers as well.
Yes. And this is, so I would posit that half of the dioceses who say they're maintaining it are not at all, right? Because if your system is, well, we put up a form and then we ask parishes if somebody joins their parish, go over to this website form and fill it out, like nobody's doing that, right? Like maybe your super, parish business manager is, nobody else is, even though functionally it's there, that's just not how people work, right? So it's like the ideal versus the reality. This is just a tough area. So if there's anything the survey highlighted, it's that it's still a mess out there, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about what best practices are. Let's look at the other 70% here, right? So are you working towards it? So do you maintain a source of truth? No. Okay. Are you working towards that? Yes. About a little bit less than 20% say they're working on it. A third said yes, but we really don't know how to get there, which I understand. We spend a lot of time kind of helping for free, helping dioceses kind of think through. That's just the role that PSG plays, is kind of always being the one you can call and say, how are other dioceses doing it? And we give you our best advice. Unsure, a third, no plans at all, 18%. And I don't blame that 18%,
No.
especially if you don't have a mandate that all of your parishes are on a single accounting platform or CHMS. Like, it's the Wild West. Like, I can't even imagine taking this project on, right? How do we, it's because it's change management, it's process, it's API stuff. It's just messy. So we get it. Okay. On the topic of mandating software, so what we're talking about here is, does the diocese tell its parishes or its schools, you have to use this software for this purpose, right? Um, first, let's start with big picture. What are the things that dioceses are mandating? The number one is parish accounting. Okay, so all parishes have to use QuickBooks or Sage or PariSoft or whatever it might be. School tuition was next. Parish CHMS, so like sacramental tracking, that's again PariSoft, PDS, um, OSV, one of those, Gabriel. Online giving, parish websites at 7%. Okay. John, surprised at all?
No, I know this does answer a question that somebody had a little bit earlier as well about who's mandating parish websites. So yes, about 7%. I know
Yep.
there's a number of dioceses that have, cut deals with larger providers, especially with e-Catholic to bring things, but that still often doesn't turn into a straight up mandate. You must rather if you were to move over, it will be cheaper,
Yep.
etc.
And on that too, I should clarify, when this question was asked, it was, do you mandate? And even the question said, meaning, yes, most of your parishes are following the mandate, but of course there's always one or two renegades, right? There's
Right, right.
the whether it's pastor preference or it's just that's the culture. This is always going to be a parish that if we say it's blue, they say green, like whatever. So this is not necessarily universal, but it is where a diocese has said we are putting our marker down. All parishes are expected to be on XYZ. It doesn't surprise me that accounting went first, just because I mean it's a transparency thing, it's a security thing, it's something the diocese if they're going to flex their muscles and get consistency, you want to start on accounting, right? The dollars and cents before you just no one's going to mandate, a parish website before they get everybody onto the same, accounting platform for a whole bunch of reasons. In terms of what software they are mandating, so let's walk through each of these. If they're mandating parish accounting, which remember about 64%, most are going to QuickBooks, and then right after that is ParishSoft.
Mm.
Okay? So those are the two big leaders, followed by other, Sage, PDS, and Shelby. Shelby's probably an old one, right? Like most, that's means they've been doing it for a long time. If they're not mandating, we also asked, okay, if you're not mandating, what software is like most popular? What do you see mostly out there? And that's always interesting to see the discrepancies. Again, they see QuickBooks most often in ParishSoft, but PDS jumped up a bunch, which is interesting. Just I guess from a business case study sense, PDS has a decent market share, but they have next to no mandates. So maybe it's just a decision like in hindsight, PDS people probably wish they would have focused harder on getting dioceses to mandate them because they're out there, but ParishSoft seems to have won the day there. Okay, so that's on the accounting front. Let's look at school tuition. Who's being mandated? Fax is the clear winner, right? So very little competition there. Fax is the one that's getting mandated. Everything else pretty consistent there. TADS is seeing some use, but not mandated. Parish CHMS, so this is like the parish data management, sacramental tracking. Again, ParishSoft, the clear leader, followed by Gabriel, which is actually an eCatholic product now. So Gabriel existed, eCatholic purchased them. Now it's, I think, eCatholic, CHMS, Church Management. Ministry Platform and PDS are both owned by the same organization, ACS. On and on down from there. So ParishSoft, the clear mandate winner, again with PDS. If you're not mandating it, then it's a 50-50 battle between ParishSoft and PDS. And this, Deacon, this echoes what we see out in the parishes, right? It's most drawn ParishSoft or PDS. New up and coming is Gabriel. A little bit about push pay, though we don't see it a whole. We hear about it a lot more from a marketing standpoint than we see kind of in the real world. But that's what we're seeing out there. Parish online giving, very few dioceses are mandating a product. When they do, again, ParishSoft, you can see they're just sticking with the suite. And then sort of a smattering after that. Give Central, Vanco, PushPay. OSV has a big presence, but not a big mandated presence, which I think is interesting. I think it's just easy to use. And OSV has such a large catalog of clients just from the bulletins and the envelopes and everything they've been doing a long time. I think it was probably easy for them to jump into the online giving space. Parish websites. 7% of dioceses mandate parish websites. John, where do you think that goes?
I was gonna say the only ones I know is e-Catholic, right? Which is, hey, we're getting a deal. Everybody come along, please. Which, to be fair, I think works really well, right? Always been impressed by e-Catholic's templates. The fact that they're so niche, they're not just dealing with, churches in a general sense, like they know exactly what needs to be done. Okay, I need a sacraments page. I need the templates, the forms, like it all makes total sense to me. Also, I think the other thing that we've seen is the big win there is there's a lot of good widgets that just pop in easily. Of course, I'm always looking at the social media widgets in there, but there's a whole bunch of other ones where the diocese can push things down to the parish and share news and things like that.
Yep. And they have good customer service. Again, we have no dog in the fight. We have no interest in e-Catholic or the other ones on here. Deacon and I will always just tell you straight. We live in this world. We see a whole lot. We'll tell you what we think when we work with these companies. E-Catholic honestly has been pretty great, pretty easy and plug and play for a lot of dioceses. If they're not mandating, e-Catholic still dominates. Diocesan, Tilma, or something in-house is kind of what else they see out there. Okay, Deacon, this is a topic close to our heart. Clergy update email. So part of the survey we wanted to wanted to answer for the folks at DISC and for ourselves. How are dioceses communicating with parishes? And we always talk about this clergy update email, right? So there's an environment that looks like this, right? You have, let's call her Agnes, that's working at the parish. She's fantastic. She's a business manager, been there a long time. And her interaction with the diocese in a lot of places is this, right? An email from an office. It's like, hey, Agnes, can you put this in your bulletin? And then another email, from a different department. It's like, hey, could you post this on your Facebook page? And then another email. It's like, hey, email this out to your parishioners, or go here and download this resource. Fill out this form from the finance office. Go to the parish resource page and do this. Here's an attachment, and it just goes on and on. Here's something for your website. Here's an event that's going on, and eventually, it's read the clergy email. This is it's a sticking point in a lot of dioceses, and I was curious if anybody has solved it in a nice, elegant way. And by it, I mean communicating from the diocese to the parishes. Here's everything that's going on, right? Here are the events that are coming up. Here's the stuff that your pastor needs to know. Here's the stuff that your parish, leadership office needs to know in a nice, digestible format. And the reality, John, is that no, nobody has solved this in a real elegant way. In fact, it was a little bit worse even than I thought.
Yes.
Only 11% of dioceses provide that information through like an internal blog, which if you're just looking at it from a business sense, that is what I think you or I would do, right? So instead of an email from the Vicar General saying, hey, here's all the stuff you need to know, that doesn't get read, and then the pastor has a question, and what do? They just email the Vicar General and say, hey, what time do I need to show up for XYZ? Like, this functionally should be a blog. It should be an ongoing, here's everything you need to know. It's hyperlinked. That way everyone can go, they can search for the information they need. It's tagged. Like, that is how you would do it if you started a diocese from scratch. Only 11%, 1 in 10 dioceses do that. Okay, so seems like a missed opportunity. I want to say shocked, but I wasn't. I was flummoxed that 4% of dioceses still do this through the mail, right? There's somebody whose whole job it is to gather up, and I'm sure there's a ton of deadlines and requirements and a very formal process to gather up all the information, maybe even cut out clippings, right, and like tape them onto a piece of paper and then mail a packet out to every single parish. 4% of dioceses, that is how they distribute information. Doesn't seem to be the most efficient. I understand tradition, I really do, but it's not serving your parishes well. 19% of dioceses, excuse me, have no formal process to communicate news and parish updates in parish. So 1 in 5 dioceses, there's just no process. It's, well, they learn it however they learn it, or maybe they go to the diocesan website, but there's nothing internal communication wise that makes this easy on the parishes. Less than a third of dioceses have a shared calendar. And I'm not talking here, John, shared calendar like we have at work where you and I can see each other's calendar and we can see if we've rented a conference room and stuff like that. I'm talking if a parish wants to know when are the big events happening, when is the March for Life, when is the Theology on Tap event, when are the other parishes. I'm talking be able to see the events that are happening. Less than a third have a shared calendar that can do that, whether it's on a website or through SharePoint or something else. This is a massive opportunity. Okay. I'm not here to offer solutions, although I know, Deacon, that you've gotten dragged into this on the Catholic social media side of helping solve it.
Yep.
But just sharing it for all. We have a whole lot of COOs on the line. We've got a lot of COOs. Did you read the Pillar article on COOs?
we were all discussing this about 2 weeks ago. So
if you're a diocesan COO, you got to change your title real quick.
Yeah,
to make sure you don't have to forfeit any victories. But a lot of CFOs on here as well, finance folks. This is an area that you should care about. If you want to know what dioceses have kind of solved it well, reach out. We can kind of walk you through it. But this is a big area where you can have some quick wins for your parishes.
Yeah. And I would say here too, Nick, from my perspective, relatively recently minted member of the clergy, I myself have a heck of a time walking my way through various emails from my diocese, trying to determine what is relevant to me and what is not. The fact is a lot of in a lot of these situations, I think where things are not going super well, it's because the onus is on the reader to sort of skim through something long. And is this me? Is this not? Is this me? Is this not? Is this me? Is this not? And so this is where, distribution groups, this is where, who needs to know what type of questions do need to be asked. But again, we're not here yet to offer any super simple solutions. We get it is a hurdle and a difficulty.
And it's a hurdle, two more reasons. It's cross-departmental. There's no one department that owns this, right? Because the people that care is every department cares. Also, we run into that issue in dioceses where it's like, I'm going to be a little critical. If a diocese sees their job as, well, I sent out the email, like I checked it off, like I did my job, like it's out there. Technically, that's correct. But the reality is, parishes are bombarded by emails from a whole bunch of different, like, that is not enough anymore to be like, well, I sent it out. It's your fault for not reading it. You got to meet them halfway. Like, what is a more useful format for you to get this information out to them in a usable way? And we'll talk about the trends. And dioceses are moving in and solving this in a bunch of different ways. We'll talk about it in the larger sense of serving things up on a platter for parishes. First, let's talk about newspapers. We get this question all the time. Comms, so this is for all the communications folks on the line. Does your diocese print a newspaper? Hot off the presses, you will not get more accurate data than this. We really worked our tails off to get all this data. 48% are still printing newspapers, okay? 52% said no. We asked how many. Only 13% are doing the weekly, right? Which doesn't shock me, right? It used to be there's some places that had dailies, and then it moved to weekly, and the trend seems to be getting less and less. Excuse me, about half are printing what I'll call bi-weekly, fewer than 20 a year, usually monthly, 31%. Okay. I promise I will solve this cough. Probably not by the end of the webinar, but soon. When did you stop printing the newspaper? Okay. More than 5 years ago, 37%. A third of those who are not printing stopped within the last 3 to 5 years. 24% in the last 3 years. So within the last 5 years, that's more than half of the people that stopped. So this is the trend that we're seeing. This is not, I want to be clear, this is not an indictment on Catholic newspapers. I think they're great. If you're printing one, keep printing it as long as you can, because there is a market that you are reaching that you will not reach in other ways. This is a function of the newspaper print model as a model not working anymore, right? Not just for dioceses, but across the country. Consolidation, just printing broadsheets and mailing them out and sending them out and hand delivering them is not an economic model that works anymore for a whole bunch of different reasons. The Catholic Church is a lagging indicator on that. So again, we get in these discussions. We are not coming from your newspapers. I keep printing your newspapers. They're wonderful. The fact is most dioceses are going away from it. They're pulling back because the economics just don't work like they used to. Among those who are still printing, about 2/3 are going to keep going exactly as they are. We said, all right, what are your plans going forward? Only a small portion said they're going to decrease. I think only one said they're going to plan to stop printing, and then about a third is trying to figure it out. Right? They're looking to other dioceses, they're looking to surveys like this to find out what is the market doing. Many dioceses have moved to a magazine. So, of those who are not printing a newspaper, remember a little bit more than half, and there's 48% that are still printing. 72% of those who stop printing a newspaper are printing a magazine. Okay, John, does that surprise you at all?
No. This is kind of I think a standard sort of moment. It feels like this is becoming the new thing here. And I think what we're seeing is that the newspaper is getting wound down slowly, the magazine's getting wound up, and so you're sort of one is passing the other. Otherwise, sometimes I think too there's some questions about kind of, like maybe the seminary's got a magazine and it covers everything in the diocese, really, but it's sponsored elsewhere. But it does seem like we're sort of saying newspaper drop, magazine kind of increasing to eventually take its place. It just might be a decade-long process.
Yep. And it's not just printing fewer and shinier pictures, but just the function of it, right? The function used to be you look to a Catholic diocesan newspaper for news, right? Like that is where you got the news. The news cycle, was not 24 hours a day. You could actually get fresh news from a newspaper. We don't live in that world anymore, right? I get news up to the second on my phone through social media feeds, right? So the function of what you're providing to them doesn't have to be news anymore. It is moving to that feature article, right? The columns, the features, the more in-depth discussions of topics. Magazines are great for that. Newspapers are not great for that. It makes sense that people are moving in that direction. Newspaper only, you can see. So there's 15% of those that are printing newspaper also have a magazine. I'm curious if that's sort of moving in that transition or if it's just the way they do it. For those that publish a magazine, Faith is out there. So it was, I don't think I have the data. I'm gonna have to look if I have the data on how many, a number of dioceses that print magazines. I think it's more than half use Faith magazine. So it's kind of a shell. It's like a syndicate where they provide. You probably know more than me, John, but they provide the shell and a whole bunch of articles and columns, and you get a certain number of pages that you fill with local stuff. Is that right?
Right. Yes, correct. That's often how it goes. There are a bunch of other providers doing this besides Faith as well. But there are, yeah, it's sort of a pull in what is of interest to you. That's the basics. Write your own local pieces around it.
Great question from Stephen in Seattle asking, are magazines dying too? I don't know if that's the case or not. I mean, I'm sure Faith Magazine would dispute it. I don't know that. I don't know the data on whether magazines. I do know that from a functional perspective, it is much more appropriate these days for, as a Catholic, to look to a magazine as feature stuff around my diocese and more in-depth, again, like commentary type stuff, than it is for me to look to a printed black and white newspaper to get actual news of the day, which isn't really something that's happening anymore.
Right.
And obviously advertisers play a role in this as well. Okay, so let's lean in. Deacon, you and I talked about this quite a bit. So the change in role of the diocese, how this is evidenced in the survey results and what we're seeing. We've done webinars on this. If you if you're curious, we can share links. But here's what's happening in dioceses. There's a centralization and professionalization of the services being provided from the diocese to the parish. That is what is happening across the country. 180 dioceses, diocesan offices, the pendulum is swinging to centralized and professionalized services to parishes. It's happening in three waves. Wave one was accounting and finance. We see this in the mandates that are happening. Parishes, you must use QuickBooks or PerisSoft or whatever it might be. Accounting, finance, payroll, that was the first thing to get consolidated because it's the easiest thing, honestly. Like the back office is the easiest thing for a diocese to sort of organize and get centralized and get cleaned up for all the parishes. Wave two was fundraising, and PSG has played a large role in that. Dioceses professionalizing the way that they're fundraising, taking on a larger role for Catholic schools and grouping things together, even helping professionalize it at the parish level. That wave is largely done. I say about 75% of the way. The next wave, which we're just now getting into, is on the communication side. That excites us because these first two waves, that's boring, right? That's just operational. It's important. It's critical. All the COOs know this. You have to get your house in order. We no longer have the luxury, where you'd have a pastor and two or three associates that could go and run a parish and really put the time in. That's
Right.
not what we live in anymore. You have a pastor, in many cases, assigned to a clustered group of parishes. You at the diocese need to make it as easy as possible for them to be a pastor and minister to the people without having to worry about HR compliance and QuickBooks and all this other stuff. So dioceses are taking that on. They've largely done that with the boring stuff, but on the comm side, the help that we're seeing dioceses provide is helping their parishes to evangelize and grow. And this is the really exciting thing, right? So it's not just standardizing, back end office process. It's the diocese saying, how can I help my parishes reach people in an easier way? How can I help them evangelize? How can I help them serve things up on a platter to them in a way that is easy and meaningful to them? Really, we're seeing this happen in three ways. And I shared it on the comm side earlier, but just to kind of put a finer point on it, you're seeing it through the website, right? So eCatholic is a provider that's providing websites so the diocese can create it, serve it up for every parish, make it easy, and actually push content down. Flocknote is doing it from the communications email standpoint. The diocese is getting a Flocknote account. They're able to provide it to the parishes. They can provide templates and everything else. Catholic social media, what Deacon John and his team are doing, to be able to have a diocese create social media content for parishes and serve it up on a platter so that parishes can then post it. That is where the movement's at diocesan level. Everything's getting centralized and making it easy as possible for parishes to run the parish. Okay. I want to highlight a couple things we're interested in this survey, and then we'll take some Q&A here. Chat, John, I wanted to highlight this because it strikes me. 21% of dioceses said they don't use chat at all. And even among that 79%, it was not what you could just tell. In my conversation, I talked to almost everybody that filled out a survey. You could tell they had it, but it wasn't like ingrained in the culture of running the office,
Yeah.
right? And it is everywhere else. Like
Yeah.
PSG is a small example of this. We live on chat. I cannot imagine working in any place now and not having dedicated threads on like, okay, this is the group of people involved in communications. This is the leadership team. This is
Right.
a special project we're doing on evangelization and being able to live chat with one another. So is all this just happening by email, John, or what's going on? Like, how are
In a
people
lot
doing
of
it?
cases it is, and this is why things I think are getting lost, right? Which is that I think the pressure that you get, especially on a pastor, right, is pastors more and more likely in this day and age to have multiple church sites that he's got to juggle and administer, right? He's driving around all over the place. And so chat versus email would be very helpful to him, but when everything gets buried in email threads, it's like something just kind of falls off the page and you sort of lose it. We
Yes.
do email here at PSG, but I would say 75% of the day-to-day work is in various groups so that you sort of know, okay, like we have an ICSC 2024 one, and we are all sharing, hurricane maps at the moment
Yeah.
and other things about, where do we want to go to eat? What time are our flights? We're pinning messages that are important. We're unpinning them as they become less important. But generally speaking, it's a lot more manageable. I think the other benefit of chat is that most of your chat functions, so whether it's Teams or Zoom or Slack or anything else, the search functions are more usable. We all know that Outlook search is pretty much broken at this
Yes.
point in time,
Yes.
whereas chat searches are actually still rather robust and working well.
So for the people in the chat, yes, we're talking about here about Teams or Zoom chat or Google chat, whatever it is. It's just remarkable to us, I would say, just from a business operation standpoint. If I'm in a diocese, this is something I'm implementing right away. And of course, it's hard, and change is always hard, and people, habits die hard. But I will tell you, John, if we do this in 3 years, I will be shocked if everybody, not everybody, I'd be shocked if half the dioceses by then aren't reporting, okay, yeah, we moved to a chat feature and it's changed our lives, right? How
Yep.
much more effective we are as a diocese
Right.
now that we can have chat threads and you can search for files, and it's just so much easier than getting buried in inboxes. So do with that what you will. It was remarkable to me to see that and to really get the sense of like people, dioceses are not using the chat the way the rest of the business world has moved on to. And I know I cringe whenever somebody says we've got to run this nonprofit like a business. Like that is triggering in a whole bunch of different ways. That's not what I'm advocating. I'm just saying your life gets easier if you use chat instead of getting 1,000 emails a day that are not organized in an easy way. Okay. Next big thing. We asked about um, crypto because again, this was reflective of this study was commissioned by DISC. We did it for free, but they were the ones that kind of partnered with us and helped promote it, and they were looking for the data. DISC people by and large are very interested in crypto. We asked dioceses, are you able to collect if somebody made a gift? Do you have policies in place to accept crypto donations? So 9% said yes. The number of conversations I've had around this, Deacon, around dioceses worried about, oh my gosh, we've got to get policies in place and everything else. I mean, legion, the number of conversations, many, many conversations. I polled PSG, and PSG is involved in almost every diocese. And our team has heard of, not facilitated, we have heard of exactly one gift of cryptocurrency in the last 6 years. One gift in the last 6 years in cryptocurrency. So whatever there's probably a principle, maybe like of ratio of like conversation to like reality.
Yep.
This is off the charts, right?
Yep.
Stop caring about crypto. The gifts are not happening. And if somebody came to you, Deacon, and you didn't have a policy, and they said, "I want to give you 1 million Doge coins or whatever," like you'd probably be able to find a way to make that happen, right?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you
So no,
don't you don't need you don't need to be I think staying up burning the midnight oil, sort of asking this in a theoretical sense, right? And
no.
this is I have to say it is like a lot of new technology where you do have to sort of wait for the sort of fad portion of it to settle down a bit. Like when it's marketed everywhere, you do kind of have to go,
Yes.
wow, this is really getting pushed hard.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's
This
not that big of a deal. I don't know.
So this is either validating or frustrating to a bunch of people. But stop caring about crypto. Like just stop. You don't need to. Like you do not. We've already talked about it too much. Okay. Speaking of new technologies, artificial intelligence. What you need to know about artificial intelligence is this. It is the Wild West, and anybody that tells you they know officially where this is all going is lying to you. Maybe not intentionally, maybe they're overconfident, but it is just the Wild West. Okay, legally, copyright issues, ownership, plagiarism in your schools. Like it is just a crazy time to be working in information security and in education. I mean, Deacon, you taught for a number of years. Can you imagine teaching right now with
Yeah, it's a
the
rough go for a lot of my friends at the moment.
it's it's crazy. There are legal cases. I mean, there's a framework that would get put in place. The case to keep an eye on, the New York Times case where the New York Times is suing ChatGPT because people could type in a question and they basically regurgitate a whole bunch of stuff that is actually behind a paywall. That'll make its way up. There'll be landmark cases galore. It's just the Wild West, and I don't know a better, way to be candid with you than just tell you it's a mess. Nobody really knows where it's going. We're big fans of keeping on tabs on it. I mean, there's some amazing things that you can do around graphic design is where we use it a bunch. Right now, in terms of our diocese using it, half said yes, 40% said no. A couple people are honest and said, I don't really know if people are using it or not. The concerns that people had, it's all of them, right? There's no main insight here other than everybody's concerned about everything. Concerned about information being accurate, about data privacy, moral concerns, IP concerns, all of those things.
Yeah.
So that's what we learned about artificial intelligence. Yeah, I guess I'll leave it there. We've done webinars on it, and we'll do more for diocese on how you can use it and some interesting things. But I'll leave it there for now. Uh, how to access the full report. So we just walked through the main things I get asked. I always get asked about newspapers and magazines. I get asked about how are dioceses mandating certain softwares. That's what we wanted to cover today. Shortly after this, so again, we think it'll come by the end of today, we'll send you the recording and you can download the slides as well, plus a private link to download the report. The link will take you to a page with Deacon John and myself, our beautiful faces smiling at you, put in your name, and it's your email that triggers whether you can download the report. This is the stick part of the carrot and stick, right? Actually, maybe this is a carrot part. We told everybody, if you participate, you get the full report. So of those 119 dioceses, if your email is linked to a diocese that participated, fill it out and you can get the report. If not, participate next time, right? Don't ignore our begging and pleading to participate because it actually is really worthwhile. So hopefully all of you get a ton of value out of this. You're able to go in and look. So if you want to know which diocese has everybody on one tenant, if you want to know which dioceses are using AI, if you want to see who else is using a certain payroll provider, that's where you can get it. The full report. I do want to put a word of caution out there, Deacon, and you've heard me talk about this.
Sure.
When we ask dioceses what software to use for XYZ, we also ask, how would you rate that software, 0 to 10? Because I think it's helpful for dioceses to know from their peers, okay, if they're using XYZ software for tribunal management, do
Right.
people like it or not?
Yeah, how happy are they?
It was a great idea in theory. In practice, as I looked at the results as they're coming in, what I found happened was a lot of times the person filling out the survey was a point person, like your IT director, or in some cases, development or
Sure.
finance. Not always did that person filling it out take the time to go ask the end user of that software. So a lot of
Mm,
times they would just kind of put a 6 for everything, right? Or it would be an IT person that said, well, we love Razor's Edge or we hate Razor's Edge.
yeah.
And I know for a fact that the development office feels differently. So I just want you to know there's some fuzz around those numbers. Don't take everything to the bank because the person that filled those out may or may not be the person that's using it day to day. Do with that information what you will. It just makes me hesitant to put a whole lot of stock in it. I don't want to, praise companies or trash companies based on one person's opinion, which may or may not be indicative. So that was, if I had to do it all over again, we'd have to think long and hard about how do we make sure we get that number to be really accurate and the person answering it is responsible. So
Yeah. Yeah.
just know that. Okay. So that's where you go to download the full reports. We'll get you the private link. If you have questions, again, we did a ton of them in the chat here. If you have questions for Deacon and I, now's the chance. We can go to the Q&A section. First,
Two I can throw your way, Nick, if that's okay.
please.
Margaret asks, is this survey going to be presented at ICSC as well?
Part of it. Yep. So I'm presenting, I think, the Tuesday of ICSE. I'm going to pull out the interesting stuff that is relevant to the fundraising office. So we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive on that.
Okay.
But then we're also presenting some other stuff. So I'd say maybe a fifth of it will be represented to the development folks. And for all the CFOs and finance people, I'll also be talking about this at DFMC. Swing by and chat. I can give you more information there.
Gabby has also asked, who did you reach out to in each diocese to fill out this survey?
Love it. So the survey was sponsored by DISC. So at most dioceses are a member of DISC. It's all the information security folks. So we started there. So if there's a representative disc, it was, hey, we're doing this. Who is the, and I asked every diocese, who is the best person to fill this out? In many cases, they connected me with the CFO or COO or something like that. Sometimes they just said, I'll do it. Sometimes they ghosted me and ignored me completely for a number of weeks. And I just kept,
Yeah.
then I just started calling anybody I know. And most people I know at a diocese, I know most comms directors and CFOs and development people. So if I didn't hear back from a diocese, I'd reach out to who do I know the best at that diocese, talk to them on the phone, say, hey, here's what we're doing. Who's the best person? So if you don't know who filled it out, you can actually reach out to me and I'll tell you who from your diocese did the lead. Ideally, what they were asked to do was, here's the survey, here's the questions on comms, go talk to your comms director, get the information.
Right.
Here's the stuff on development, go talk to them. It happened in a bunch of dioceses. In a couple dioceses, I can tell you, I think some IT directors just kind of mashed buttons and got through it, which I appreciate the participation, but want to make sure that we get good, accurate data as well.
Right. And a lot of this is just starting there is because this was mostly about software, right? This was mostly about what are your services that you are using. And so it makes sense to start with the disc folks, work your way up or down or sideways from there. So if you didn't see this cross your desk, maybe, you know, next time we do this, might be coming your way.
That's right. And so that's my goal. And hopefully this is useful. So I know people are logging off here because we're bumping up on time. I appreciate all of you. Again, we know it's a pain to do this. Hopefully you see the value, right? Because every diocese there's meetings happening where they say, "Hey, we want to do X, Y, Z. We want to mandate a software. What are other dioceses doing?" Now, for the first time, you have that data, right? You have
Mhm.
that data in front of you. If you have any questions, if you want a shortcut and don't want to read everything, just email me and I'll give you the answer. But that's the whole point. We wanted to make this easy and approachable for dioceses.
Right.
Um, okay, so Deacon, let's leave it there. I don't think people have questions. They're all just like, let me download it and let me hand it off because we had a question about XYZ. Um, actually, never mind. We got a question. Last second question coming in. Uh,
Take a peek.
question that would be interesting to get opinion on. How do you rank your diocese IT department roles? Okay, so very niche question there from a disk user about information security user support stuff. So yep, point well taken. And honestly, there's no shortage of things that I wish that we could ask, but it's always that how do you make it as robust as possible, but also achievable? I cannot ask people to spend 40 hours filling out a big, broad thing. I got to keep it as niche as possible.
Yeah.
All right, Deacon, thank you for joining us today. I
Thank you,
certainly
Mr.
appreciate
Prenger.
it. I know everybody appreciates your insight. Look for the email today. If you don't see it, look in your spam folder. If you have questions, look for us at ICSC or DFMC. We'll be down there in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see you all in person.
Okay. God bless everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.